The silver ship moved through space like a needle through dark cloth. Inside the control room, Commander Deho watched the blue and green planet grow larger on his screen. Earth, they called it in the old galactic records. A small world in a quiet corner of the galaxy. Distance to target? Deho asked. 2 million kilometers and closing, Mira replied from her navigation chair. She was the best pilot in the Kepler fleet, able to guide ships through the most dangerous space routes. Her fingers danced over the controls with practiced ease. Deho nodded and looked at the planet again. After 500 years of exploring the galaxy, he had seen thousands of worlds. Most were empty rocks floating in the void. Some had simple life forms, plants that ate sunlight or small creatures that swam in alien seas. Very few had intelligent life. The reports about Earth were interesting but not unusual. The beings here had built cities and machines. They could fly in the air and send messages across great distances. But they were still trapped on their home world, using primitive rockets that could barely reach their own moon. What do our scans show about their technology level? Deho asked Jinwoo. Jinwoo was their weapons expert, but he also studied the military technology of other species. He pulled up data on his screen and frowned slightly. Strange readings, Commander. They have nuclear weapons, quite powerful ones. But their space technology is very basic. Most of their rockets still use chemical fuel. They have only sent a few small ships beyond their planet, so they can destroy themselves but cannot leave their world easily, Deho said. Typical of young species. So-young looked up from her cultural analysis station. She had spent years studying different alien civilizations, learning how they thought and lived. Commander, I am reading something unusual. These humans have over 200 separate nations on their planet. Most species unite their world before they reach space, but humans are still divided into many groups. Deho walked to the main viewing window. The planet Earth filled the space before them now, its blue oceans and white clouds beautiful in the starlight. It looked peaceful from here, but So-young's reading suggested otherwise. Divided and primitive, he said quietly. This should be a simple survey mission. The Kepler Empire had been exploring space for over 50,000 years. They had built cities on 1,000 worlds and created technology that could bend space and time. Most species they met were either too primitive to matter or so advanced they had moved beyond physical existence. Humans seemed to fit the first category perfectly. Take us into their solar system, Mira, but keep us hidden. We will observe them for 7 days, then return home with our report. The ship moved closer to Earth, its advanced shields making it invisible to human detection. Systems. As they entered the solar system, their instruments began collecting detailed information about the third planet and its inhabitants. Deho reviewed the initial data in his private quarters that night. The humans had a population of nearly 8 billion individuals scattered across their world's continents. They had built massive cities with millions of inhabitants each. Their technology was advancing rapidly. In just the last century, they had gone from riding animals for transportation to flying metal machines through their skies. But something felt wrong about the data. The advancement was too fast, too sudden. Most species took thousands of years to develop such technology. Humans had done it in mere decades. Computer, show me human technological development over the last 500 years, he commanded. Charts and graphs appeared on his screen. Deho studied them carefully, his trained mind looking for patterns. What he saw made him lean forward in surprise. 500 years ago, humans were using simple tools made of metal and wood. They traveled on foot or with animals. Their weapons were basic swords and early firearms. But then something changed. The pace of development suddenly increased. New discoveries came faster and faster. Steam engines, electricity, radio waves, computers, spaceflight, all developed in an impossibly short time. This cannot be correct, Deho muttered. He called up comparison data from other species the Kepler had studied. The Telrani people had taken 3,000 years to develop from basic metals to spaceflight. The Vorthan civilization needed 5,000 years. Even the quick-developing Meshari had required 1,500 years. Humans had done it in less than 300 years. Deho frowned and called Mira to his quarters. Look at this data, he said when she arrived. Tell me what you see. Mira studied the charts for several minutes. Her expression grew puzzled, then concerned. Commander, this development rate is impossible. No species advances this quickly. There must be an error in our scanning equipment. Run a full diagnostic on all systems, Deho ordered. I want to know if our instruments are malfunctioning. While Mira worked on the diagnostic, Deho called Jinwoo and So-young to join them. When they arrived, he showed them the same data. Jinwoo whistled softly. If these numbers are accurate, humans have developed weapons technology faster than any species in galactic history. Look at this. They went from simple gunpowder to nuclear weapons in less than 600 years. What about their culture and society? Deho asked So-young. She pulled up her own data and shook her head in confusion. Commander, their cultural development is equally strange. They have created art, music, and literature of remarkable complexity. Their philosophical ideas are sophisticated beyond what should be possible for such a young species. Mira returned with the diagnostic results. All systems are functioning perfectly, Commander. The data is accurate. Deho stood and walked to the window again. Earth turned slowly below them, day and night chasing each other across its surface. Lights from human cities glowed like stars against the darkness. Something is not right here, he said quietly. Young species do not develop this quickly. There must be something we are missing about these humans. Jinwoo pulled up military data on his portable scanner. Commander, I have been studying their warfare patterns. Humans fight constantly. There are conflicts happening on their world right now, but they also show remarkable courage and sacrifice for their fellow beings. All species fight, So-young said. What makes humans different? They fight for ideas, Jinwoo replied. Not just for territory or resources, but for concepts like freedom and justice. I have records of human soldiers dying to protect complete strangers. They will sacrifice themselves for principles that have no physical value. So-young nodded thoughtfully. Yes, I see this in their cultural records too. They create art about sacrifice and heroism. They tell stories about individuals who give up everything to help others. Deho felt a strange chill. In 50,000 years of galactic exploration, the Kepler had learned that most species were predictable. They fought for survival, territory, and resources. They advanced slowly and steadily. They followed patterns that could be understood and predicted. Humans did not seem to follow these patterns. We need more information, he decided. Extend our mission to 14 days. I want detailed scans of their major population centers. Study their technology, their culture, their behavior, patterns. Something about this species is different and I need to understand what it is. Over the next 3 days, they gathered more data. Mira mapped human transportation networks and was amazed by their complexity. Jinwoo studied human military technology and found innovations that impressed even his trained mind. So-young analyzed human communication patterns and discovered they had created global information networks that connected their entire planet. But the more they learned, the more puzzling humans became. Commander, Mira reported on the 4th day, I have discovered something unusual about human space exploration. What have you found? They have detailed plans for interstellar travel, not just basic ideas, complete engineering designs for ships that could travel between stars. But they have not built any of these ships yet. Deho frowned. How can they design starships when they barely have basic spaceflight? I do not know, sir, but their designs are sophisticated. Some of their theoretical work is more advanced than our own early starship designs. Jinwoo looked up from his station. Commander, I have similar findings about their weapons technology. They have theoretical designs for weapons that could destroy entire planets, but they have chosen not to build them. Chosen not to build them? Deho asked. Yes, sir. They have the knowledge and capability, but their leaders have made agreements not to create such weapons. They call them treaties. So-young added her own discovery. Their literature contains stories about space travel and alien contact that show remarkable understanding of the challenges involved. They write about concepts that most species do not consider until they have been traveling between stars for centuries. Deho walked between their stations, listening to each report. Every piece of new information made humans seem less like a primitive species and more like something else entirely. "Show me their global communication network," he commanded. The main screen displayed a map of Earth with millions of light connections, showing information flow between human settlements. Data moved around the planet in seconds, connecting billions of individuals in real-time communication. "They built this network in less than 50 years, Mira said. Most species take CE. Mira's hands moved quickly over her controls as she guided their ship into a lower orbit around Earth. 7 days had passed since they began their detailed study of the humans, and each day brought new surprises. "Commander," she called to Deho, "I am detecting some unusual readings from their scientific facilities." Deho moved to her station and looked at the data streaming across her screens. The numbers made no sense to him. "What am I looking at?" "Energy signatures from human research centers. They are conducting experiments that should be impossible with their level of technology." Mira pointed to a facility located in a place called Switzerland. "This location shows energy patterns consistent with particle acceleration experiments. But Commander, the mathematical calculations they must be using are incredibly advanced." She pulled up another reading from a facility in the United States. "And this one appears to be working with quantum field manipulation. Sir, these are technologies that took our civilization thousands of years to develop." Deho studied the readings more carefully. What Mira was showing him should not exist on a planet where the most advanced spacecraft used chemical rockets. "Are you certain about these readings?" "I have checked them multiple times, Commander. The humans are working with scientific principles that they should not understand for at least another 1,000 years of development." From across the control room, So Young looked up from her cultural analysis station. "Commander, I am finding similar anomalies in human literature and art." "What do you mean?" So Young transferred her data to the main screen. "Look at these examples of human creative work. This music composition from a human named Bach contains mathematical relationships that demonstrate understanding of universal harmonics. This artwork from someone called Da Vinci shows knowledge of human anatomy and mechanical engineering that was centuries ahead of its time." She pulled up more examples. "And these writings? Humans have been creating stories about space travel, alien contact, and advanced technology for hundreds of years. Not simple stories, Commander, but detailed explorations of concepts that should be unknown to them." Jinwoo joined the discussion. "I have been studying their military history and found the same pattern. Human warriors throughout their history have used tactics and strategies that show intuitive understanding of principles we did not discover until much later in our development." He displayed battle records on his screen. "Look at this engagement from their Second World War. These human commanders coordinated complex operations involving millions of soldiers across multiple continents simultaneously. The logistics and communication requirements should have been impossible with their technology at that time." Deho felt the chill growing stronger. "Show me more of their current scientific work." Mira pulled up data from research facilities around Earth. "They are working on theories about parallel dimensions, time manipulation, and consciousness transfer. Commander, some of their theoretical frameworks are more advanced than our own current understanding." "That cannot be possible." "I know, sir, but look at this paper from a human physicist." She displayed a document filled with complex mathematical equations. "This human is proposing methods for faster-than-light travel that we never considered. His calculations appear to be correct." So Young added more examples. "Their philosophers write about the nature of consciousness and reality with depth that usually requires millions of years of species development to achieve. They ask questions about existence that most civilizations never think to ask." Deho walked to the viewing window and stared down at the blue planet below. Lights from human cities glowed in the darkness, each one representing millions of these strange beings. "How is this possible?" he asked quietly. "Young species do not develop this way." Jinwoo pulled up comparative data. "Commander, I have been thinking about this problem. What if humans are not actually a young species?" "What do you mean?" "What if they are an old species that lost their technology and had to rebuild it? That might explain the rapid advancement. 8. They are rediscovering knowledge they once possessed. Mira shook her head. I checked their archaeological records. Their development shows a clear progression from primitive tools to advanced technology. There are no gaps that would suggest a lost civilization, so Young offered another theory. What if they received help from another advanced species? Secret contact that accelerated their development. I have found no evidence of outside interference, Deho said. Our scans would detect traces of alien technology. Then how do we explain what we are seeing? Mira asked. Deho had no answer. In 50,000 years of galactic exploration, the Kepler had developed detailed models for how civilizations advanced. Young species followed predictable patterns. Old species became stagnant and eventually faded away. But humans seemed to follow no pattern at all. Continue gathering data, he ordered. Focus on their scientific and cultural achievements. I want to understand how they are doing this. Over the next 2 days, the team collected more examples of impossible human advancement. Mira discovered that humans had developed global positioning, systems that were more accurate than early Kepler navigation technology. Jinwu found evidence that human military strategists had independently developed tactical principles that the Kepler considered classified information. So Young made perhaps the most disturbing discovery of all. Commander, I have been analyzing human educational systems, she reported. I think I understand part of what makes them different. Explain. Most species educate their young by teaching them established facts and methods. Humans do this too, but they also teach their children to question everything and create new ideas. She displayed examples on the main screen. Look at these human schools. They encourage students to challenge their teachers, propose new theories, and think in ways that no one has thought before. Most civilizations consider such behavior dangerous and discourage it. And this leads to faster advancement? Yes, Commander. Human children are taught from birth to push beyond existing limits. They are rewarded for finding new solutions to old problems. Each generation builds on previous knowledge while also questioning its foundations. Jinwu nodded thoughtfully. That would explain their rapid military development. Human soldiers are trained to adapt quickly to new situations and find creative solutions under pressure. They do not just follow orders, they are expected to improve upon them. Mira added her own observation. It explains their scientific advancement too. Human researchers do not just study established theories. They actively try to prove them wrong so they can find better explanations. Deho considered this information. The Kepler civilization was ancient and stable. They had perfected their society over thousands of years and rarely changed their methods. Young Kepler learned the wisdom of their ancestors and faithfully applied it. Change was slow and carefully considered. Humans appeared to do the opposite. They embraced change and actively sought to improve everything around them. Show me examples of human problem solving, he requested. So Young displayed a series of case studies. Here is how humans responded to a global disease outbreak 2 years ago. Within months, they had developed new medical treatments, created global communication networks to share information, and coordinated the production and distribution of medicines across their entire planet. How long did this take them? Less than 1 Earth year, Commander. Most species would require decades to mount such a coordinated response. Jinwu pulled up military examples. When humans face impossible military situations, they do not surrender or retreat. They find ways to turn their disadvantages into advantages. Look at this historical battle where outnumbered human forces defeated a much larger enemy by using tactics no one had ever considered. Mira showed scientific examples. When human space missions encounter unexpected problems, their ground crews develop solutions in real time. They modify their equipment and procedures instantly to deal with new challenges. Deho studied each example carefully. What he was seeing suggested that humans possessed something the Kepler had never encountered before, the ability to adapt and evolve almost instantly when faced with new challenges. Computer, analyze all data we have collected about human development patterns, he commanded. Calculate their projected advancement rate based on current trends. The ship's computer processed the information for several minutes before displaying its conclusions. Deho stared at the results in disbelief. According to these calculations, humans will develop faster than light travel within 50 Earth years, he said slowly. That cannot be correct, Mira protested. The computer is using their actual advancement rate over the last century, Deho replied. If they continue developing at their current pace, they will achieve in 50 years what took us 5,000 years. So Young pulled up more data. Commander, it gets worse. Their theoretical work suggests they understand concepts about consciousness and reality that we are still trying to comprehend. Some of their ideas could revolutionize our own technology. Jinwoo looked grim. If these projections are accurate, humans will not remain trapped on their planet much longer. Within a few generations, they could become one of the most advanced species in the galaxy. Deho felt a cold certainty settling in his mind. The discovery came on the 10th day of their mission. Mira was conducting deep scans of human research facilities when she detected something that made her call for Deho immediately. Commander, you need to see this, she said, her voice tight, with excitement and concern. Deho hurried to her station. On her screen was a document from a human research center in a place called CERN. The text was filled with mathematical equations that looked familiar, yet impossible. What am I looking at? He asked. This is a research paper published by human scientists 3 months ago, Mira explained. Commander, they have discovered mathematical principles that we developed only after 2 million years of civilization. She's highlighted specific equations on the screen. These formulas describe the relationship between space, time, and consciousness. We consider this knowledge to be among our most advanced theoretical work. But these humans developed it independently. Deho studied the equations more closely. They were not identical to Kepler mathematics, but they described the same fundamental relationships that govern the universe. How is this possible? I do not know, sir. But it gets worse. Mira pulled up another document, this one from a research facility in Japan. This paper describes methods for manipulating quantum fields that could theoretically allow faster-than-light communication. Theoretical, you said? Yes, sir. They have not built working devices yet. But their mathematics are correct. If they actually construct what they are describing, it would work. From across the control room, So Young called out urgently. Commander, I am finding similar discoveries in human cultural works. Deho moved to her station. So Young had assembled a collection of human creative works on her screen. Books, films, artworks, and musical compositions. Look at these stories humans have written about space travel and alien contact, she said. They are not simple adventure tales. They explore complex ideas about consciousness, reality, and the nature of existence. She displayed a book written by a human named Philip K. Dick. This author writes about questions of identity and reality that we consider advanced philosophical concepts. But he published this work decades ago, when humans had barely left their planet's atmosphere. What questions? Deho asked. Whether individual consciousness is real or an illusion. Whether reality exists independently of observers. Whether different types of consciousness can merge and become something greater than their individual parts. Deho felt a chill. These were indeed advanced philosophical concepts that most species did not consider until they had millions of years of development. So Young continued. And look at this film. She displayed images from a human movie called 2001, A Space Odyssey. It explores the idea that consciousness can evolve beyond physical form and become something transcendent. The humans who made this had never even been to their own moon. Jinwoo joined them at So Young's station. Commander, I have been studying human military training methods, and I believe I understand part of what makes them different. Explain. Human soldiers are not just trained to follow orders and use weapons. They are trained to think in ways that most species cannot. Jinwoo displayed training records from human military academies. Look at these exercises. Human soldiers are taught to imagine themselves in the minds of their enemies. They learn to predict behavior by understanding how different types of thinking work. All species do this to some extent, Deho said. Not like this, Commander. Humans are taught to actually change their own thinking patterns to match those of others. They can temporarily adopt completely different ways of understanding reality. So Young nodded. I see evidence of this in their cultural works too. Human actors and writers speak of becoming the characters they portray. They change their consciousness to match different personalities. Mira looked up from her mathematical analysis. That might explain their rapid scientific advancement. If humans can change their thinking patterns at will, they could approach problems from multiple perspectives. Simultaneously, Deho considered this possibility. Kepler consciousness was stable and consistent. Individual Kepler thought in predictable patterns that rarely changed throughout their long lives. It was one of the strengths of their civilization. Reliable, logical thinking that built upon itself over generations. But what if that stability was also a limitation? Show me more examples of this flexible thinking, he requested. So Young displayed records of human scientific collaborations. Look at how human researchers work together. They do not just share information, they actively try to think like each other. A physicist will attempt to understand problems the way a biologist thinks. A mathematician will adopt the perspective of an artist. And this produces better results? Yes, Commander. Their most important discoveries come from combining different types of thinking. They call it interdisciplinary research. Jinwoo added military examples. Human military units are trained to work this way too. Each soldier learns to understand how their teammates think and fight. In battle, they can coordinate their actions without direct communication because they understand each other's thought patterns. Mira pulled up more scientific data. Commander, I think this explains the mathematical discoveries I found. Human scientists are not just using human logic to solve problems. They are using multiple types of logic simultaneously. Multiple types? Yes, sir. Look at these equations again. She displayed the quantum field research. The mathematics use logical frameworks that we recognize, but combined in ways we never considered. It is as if they can think like Kepler, and like humans, and like some other type of consciousness all at the same time. Deho stared at the equations, trying to understand what Mira was suggesting. Are you saying humans have developed multiple types of consciousness within their own minds? That might be exactly what I am saying, Commander. The implications were staggering. If humans could think in multiple ways simultaneously, they could solve problems that would be impossible for single-pattern thinkers like the Kepler. Computer, Deho commanded. Analyze human brain structure and function based on our biological scans. The ship's computer displayed detailed images of human neural anatomy. Human brains show unusual connectivity patterns, the computer reported. Multiple regions that are typically specialized for different functions show high levels of cross-communication. What does that mean? Human brains appear to be designed for flexible thinking patterns. They can rapidly reorganize their neural networks to approach problems from different angles. So Young looked excited. Commander, this matches what I found in their cultural development. Humans regularly create art, music, and literature that combines elements from completely different traditions and styles. She showed examples of human music that blended styles from different continents and historical periods. Most species develop cultural traditions and then maintain them for thousands of years. Humans constantly mix and combine their traditions to create new forms. Jinwoo pulled up historical data. Their military development shows the same pattern. Humans study the fighting methods of all their enemies and allies, then combine techniques from different sources to create new approaches to warfare. Mira made another connection. And their scientific method actively encourages this type of thinking. Human researchers are trained to challenge their own assumptions and consider alternative explanations for everything they observe. Deho walked back to the viewing window. Earth turned slowly below them, its surface covered with the lights of human civilization. Each light represented millions of these remarkable beings with their flexible, multi-pattern consciousness. If what we are discovering is accurate, he said slowly, then humans are not just advancing quickly, they are advancing in ways that we cannot. What do you mean, Commander? We think in Kepler patterns. We solve problems using Kepler logic. Even when we encounter other species, we try to understand them using our own mental frameworks. He turned back to his team. But humans appear to be able to think using any mental framework they choose. They can understand problems the way we would understand them, but also in ways that we cannot even imagine. So Young looked troubled. Commander, if that is true, then humans may soon develop capabilities that are beyond our ability to predict or counter. That is exactly what concerns me. Mira pulled up the projection data from their earlier analysis. Sir, based on their current advancement rate, humans will achieve interstellar travel within 50 years. But if they can also develop new types of thinking that we do not understand, they could surpass us in ways we cannot anticipate. Deho finished. Jin Wu studied the military implications. Commander, how do you defend against an enemy who can think in ways you cannot comprehend? How do you predict the actions of beings whose consciousness is fundamentally different from your own? It was a question that had no good answer. Kepler. Military strategy was based on understanding and predicting enemy behavior. But if humans could change their thinking patterns at will, traditional strategic analysis would be useless. There is something else we should consider, So Young said quietly. What if humans are not the only species with this type of consciousness? The thought was terrifying. If flexible, multi-pattern thinking was a natural evolutionary development. On the 13th day, Deho made the decision that would change everything. He stood before his team in the ship's main briefing room, having wrestled with the choice for hours. I have decided to make contact with selected humans, he announced. Mira, Jinwoo, and So Young exchanged surprised glances. Direct contact with primitive species was against standard Kepler protocols. Commander, Mira said carefully, our orders are to observe and report. Contact is not authorized. Our orders assumed we would encounter a typical primitive species, Deho replied. Nothing about humans is typical. If we do not understand them better, our report will be incomplete and potentially dangerous. Jinwoo leaned forward. What kind of contact are you planning, sir? Limited and controlled. We will reveal ourselves to 3 humans, 1 scientist, 1 military leader, and 1 cultural expert. We will observe their reactions and learn how humans respond to the knowledge of alien contact. So Young looked concerned. Commander, first contact usually causes massive disruption in primitive societies. Religious upheaval, social collapse, mass panic. That is why we will test their response on a small scale first, Deho explained. If humans react as expected, we can withdraw without causing widespread damage. If they react differently, he paused. Then we will learn something important about what makes them unique. He had spent hours reviewing human profiles in their databases looking for individuals who might represent the best of human thinking. The choices had not been easy. I have selected 3 candidates, he continued. Dr. Hyun Soo, a quantum physicist working on theoretical models of space-time manipulation. Captain Namgi, a strategic planner for human space exploration programs. Professor Yoonji, a philosopher who studies consciousness and human potential. Ra studied the files he displayed. Why these 3? Dr. Hyun Soo's work suggests he already suspects that faster-than-light travel is possible. Captain Namgi has written papers about the challenges of interstellar exploration. Professor Yoonji has published theories about multiple forms of consciousness existing in the universe. So Young nodded slowly. You chose humans who are already thinking about the concepts we want to discuss. Exactly. If humans can adapt as quickly as we suspect, these 3 should be able to handle contact with alien intelligence without psychological breakdown. Jinwoo pulled up security data. How do we make contact safely? Human governments have military forces that might respond aggressively to alien contact. We will approach them individually and privately, Deho said. Small-scale contact that can be terminated quickly if necessary. The plan was simple but risky. They would land near each human's location during their nighttime hours, when they were alone. Brief contact, basic communication, then withdrawal to observe their reactions. If any of them show signs of panic or attempt to contact their authorities immediately, we abort and retreat, Deho explained. But if they react with curiosity and intelligence, we learn how humans really think, Mira finished. The first contact would be with Dr. Hyun-soo. Their ship approached his research facility in South Korea during the early morning hours when the scientist was known to work alone in his laboratory. Dae-ho, wearing a portable translation device and basic protective equipment, materialized in Dr. Hyun-soo's lab using their transport technology. The human looked up from his equations and saw Dae-ho standing near his desk. For a moment, both beings stared at each other in silence. Then Dr. Hyun-soo smiled. "I was wondering when you would finally introduce yourselves," he said in Korean. Dae-ho was so surprised he almost forgot to activate his translator. "You were expecting us?" "Not exactly expecting," Dr. Hyun-soo replied, setting down his pen calmly. "But I have been working on theoretical models of interstellar travel for years. The mathematics suggested that any advanced civilization would have developed faster than light travel long ago. Given the age of the galaxy, the probability of Earth being visited was quite high." The human stood up and examined Dae-ho with scientific curiosity rather than fear. "Your appearance suggests you evolved on a world with higher gravity and different atmospheric composition than Earth. The technology that brought you here must involve manipulation of space-time geometry." Dae-ho found his voice. "You are not afraid?" "Should I be? You have been observing our planet for several days without harming anyone. Your approach suggests peaceful intentions and scientific curiosity rather than conquest." "How did you know? We were observing?" Dr. Hyun-soo smiled again. "Slight gravitational anomalies that appeared in our orbital monitoring data 10 days ago. Nothing that would alarm our governments, but noticeable to someone looking for unusual patterns." The conversation continued for 2 hours. Dr. Hyun-soo asked detailed questions about Kepler science and technology, proposed theoretical frameworks for understanding their faster-than-light travel, and even suggested improvements to their scanning methods. When Dae-ho finally returned to the ship, his team was amazed by what they heard.
"He adapted to alien contact in minutes," Mira said, and immediately began trying to learn from the experience. "Most species require years to psychologically adjust to proof of alien intelligence," So Young added. This human treated it like
a routine scientific encounter. The second contact was with Captain Namgi at a military planning facility. Again, Dae-ho materialized during quiet hours, when the human was working alone. Captain Namgi looked up from his strategic planning documents and studied Dae-ho for several seconds. "Alien visitor," he said matter-of-factly. "Advanced technology, peaceful approach, probably here for reconnaissance and cultural exchange." "You are not surprised?" "Military planning requires considering all possibilities," Captain Namgi replied. "Contact with alien intelligence has always been a potential scenario. The question is what you want to learn about us, and what you are willing to share in return." They talked for 3 hours. Captain Namgi asked about galactic civilization, interstellar navigation challenges, and methods for peaceful contact between different species. He did not ask about weapons or military technology. Instead, he was interested in cooperation, mutual defense agreements, and joint exploration projects. "Your species is already planning interstellar travel," Dae-ho observed. "Of course, Earth will not remain habitable forever. Eventually we must expand to other worlds. Cooperation with established interstellar civilizations would make that expansion safer and more successful for everyone involved." When Dae-ho reported this conversation to his team, Jin-woo was amazed. "A military leader who thinks in terms of cooperation rather than conquest," he said. "In Kepler history, first contact with alien species almost always led to conflict. Human military thinking appears to be fundamentally different from what we understand," So Young observed. "They see alien contact as an opportunity rather than a threat." The third contact was with Professor Yoon-ji at her university office. She was working late on a research paper about the nature of consciousness. When Dae-ho appeared, she looked up from her writing and nodded thoughtfully. "Fascinating," she said. "A non-human intelligence. This opens up entirely new questions about the nature of consciousness and reality. You are not disturbed by my appearance? Why would I be? The universe is vast and ancient. It would be remarkably arrogant to assume that human consciousness is the only form of awareness that exists. Professor Yunji spent 4 hours discussing philosophy with Daeho. She asked about Kepler consciousness patterns, different methods of understanding reality, and the possibility of communication between fundamentally different types of awareness. I have a theory, she said near the end of their conversation. Human consciousness is designed to be flexible because we evolved on a world with constantly changing conditions. We had to adapt quickly to survive. But what if that flexibility allows us to understand and even adopt other forms of consciousness? What do you mean? What if humans can learn to think like Kepler think? And what if Kepler could learn to think like humans? What if different types of consciousness can merge and create something greater than either could achieve alone? The idea was revolutionary. Daeho had never considered the possibility that different species might be able to share consciousness patterns. When he returned to the ship for the final time, his team was waiting eagerly for his report. All 3 humans adapted to alien contact within minutes, he said. Not only did they adapt, they immediately began seeking ways to learn from and cooperate with us. That is unprecedented, Mira said. Most species require extensive preparation before they can handle proof of alien intelligence. These humans treated contact as if it were a natural and expected part of their development, So Young observed. Jinwoo looked thoughtful. Commander, what did Professor Yunji mean about merging consciousness patterns? Daeho explained the philosopher's theory about flexible consciousness being able to adopt different thinking methods. If that is possible, Mira said slowly, then humans might be able to understand our technology and science much more quickly than we anticipated. It might be more than that, So Young added. If humans can think like we think, and we can learn to think like they think, then cooperation between our species could produce advances neither could achieve alone. The idea was intriguing and terrifying. If human consciousness... The meeting took place in a secure facility that Dr. Hyun-soo had prepared in the mountains outside Seoul. Daeho brought his entire team, while the humans were represented by their 3 selected individuals, the physicist, the military strategist, and the philosopher. As the 6 beings gathered around a table in the simple conference room, Daeho felt the weight of the moment. This was unprecedented in galactic history, a planned meeting between species for the purpose of consciousness sharing and technological cooperation. Dr. Hyun-soo spoke first. We have spent the last 3 days discussing your visits among ourselves. We believe we understand what you are trying to determine about our species. And what is that? Daeho asked. Whether humans represent a new form of consciousness that could change the balance of power in the galaxy, Captain Namgi replied. Whether we are a threat to established civilizations, or whether we might be partners in advancing beyond current limitations. Professor Yunji leaned forward. But we have our own questions about your species. Your consciousness appears to be stable and logical, but also somewhat rigid. You think in consistent patterns that have served you well for thousands of years. That is accurate, Mira acknowledged. We believe, Professor Yunji continued, that human consciousness and Kepler consciousness could complement each other in remarkable ways. Your stability combined with our flexibility might produce thinking patterns that neither species could achieve alone. So Young looked intrigued. How would such cooperation work? Dr. Hyun-soo pulled out a device that looked like a simple headband with electronic components attached. We have been working on this since your first visit. It is a basic neural interface that we believe could allow direct sharing of thought patterns between different types of consciousness. Jinwoo studied the device suspiciously. That technology should be beyond human capability. Normally, yes, Dr. Hyun-soo agreed. But we had help. He gestured to his 2 companions. Captain Namgi provided strategic thinking about the interface, requirements. Professor Yunji contributed theories about consciousness compatibility, and I supplied the technical knowledge to build a working device. In 3 days? Mira asked. Human consciousness works very quickly when properly motivated, Captain Namgi said with a slight smile. We call it being inspired. Professor Yunji held up a second neural interface device. We would like to propose an experiment. One of your team and one of ours will test limited consciousness sharing to see what becomes possible. Daeho felt both excitement and fear. This could be extremely dangerous. We do not know what might happen when different types of consciousness merge. All important discoveries involve risk, Dr. Hyun-soo replied, but we believe the potential benefits outweigh the dangers. After long discussion, Daeho agreed to test the consciousness sharing with Professor Yunji. They would have limited mental contact while their teams monitored their vital signs and mental activity. The neural interface devices were surprisingly comfortable. As they activated, Daeho felt a strange sensation, as if his thoughts were expanding beyond the boundaries of his own mind. Then he was no longer thinking alone. Professor Yunji's consciousness touched his, and suddenly, Daeho could experience reality from a completely different perspective. Where his thoughts were precise and logical, hers were fluid and creative. Where he saw clear categories and defined relationships, she saw endless possibilities and connections. But instead of chaos, the merger created something beautiful. His logical precision gave structure to her creative insights, while her flexibility allowed his structured thinking to explore possibilities he had never considered. Together, they began to understand concepts that neither could have grasped alone. The universe was not just a collection of objects and forces, it was a living system where consciousness itself was a fundamental component of reality. Space and time were not fixed dimensions but flexible frameworks that consciousness could learn to navigate and modify. Most remarkably, they realized that individual consciousness was not separate from the universe around it. Every thinking being was part of a larger pattern of awareness that connected all life across the galaxy. The merger lasted only minutes, but when they separated, both Daeho and Professor Yunji were changed. Did you see it? Professor Yunji asked, her eyes bright with excitement. The connection patterns, Daeho replied. The way consciousness shapes reality itself. Dr. Hyun-soo and Mira had been monitoring the experiment with their respective technologies. Their readings showed something extraordinary. During the merger, both of your brain activity patterns showed capabilities beyond normal ranges for either species, Dr. Hyun-soo reported. It was as if you had temporarily evolved. More advanced forms of consciousness, Mira added. Captain Namgi looked thoughtful. If consciousness merger can produce temporary evolution, what might permanent cooperation achieve? So-young pulled up comparative data. Commander, the mental activity patterns we recorded suggest that merged consciousness could solve problems that would require thousands of years for either species working alone. Jinwoo studied the strategic implications. If human and Kepler consciousness can merge successfully, we could develop technologies and capabilities that would make both our civilizations far more advanced than they are now. Daeho nodded slowly. But it would also mean fundamental changes to how both our species exist. We would no longer be purely human or purely Kepler. We would become something new, Professor Yunji agreed. Something that has never existed before in the galaxy. Dr. Hyun-soo looked excited. We have been working on a larger application of this technology, a project we call the Unity Ship. He displayed holographic plans for a spacecraft unlike anything Daeho had ever seen. It was not just a vehicle for traveling through space. It was a living system designed to be operated by merged consciousness from multiple species. The ship itself would be an extension of the merged consciousness, Dr. Hyun-soo explained. Not controlled by the crew but integrated with them, the boundary between ship and consciousness would disappear. Captain Namgi added tactical details. Such a vessel could navigate space-time in ways that conventional ships cannot. It could adapt to any situation instantly because its consciousness would be flexible enough to find solutions to any problem. Mira studied the technical specifications. This design uses principles we never considered. The propulsion system appears to manipulate space-time through consciousness rather than through mechanical force. Because consciousness and reality are fundamentally connected, Professor Yunji said. Once you understand that relationship, You can learn to navigate reality through awareness rather than through technology. So Young looked amazed. You are proposing to build a ship that is operated by pure consciousness. Not pure consciousness, Dr. Hunsu corrected. Enhanced consciousness created by merging different types of awareness. The ship would be an expression of what human and Kepler consciousness could become working together. Jinwoo considered the military implications. Such a vessel could defend against any threat because its consciousness would be capable of understanding and countering any form of attack. But more importantly, Captain Namgi said, it could explore the galaxy in ways that no conventional ship could. It could make contact with other forms of consciousness we have never imagined. Daeho felt the magnitude of what the humans were proposing. They were not just talking about cooperation between species, they were talking about evolution into something entirely new. How long would it take to build such a ship, he asked. The technical construction could be completed within 1 Earth year, Dr. Hyunsu replied. But preparing the consciousness merger systems would require volunteers from both our species to undergo permanent integration. Permanent integration? Yes, Professor Yoonji said seriously. The crew would have to merge their consciousness patterns permanently to operate the ship. They would become a new form of life, neither human nor Kepler, but something that combines the best of both. The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications. What the humans were proposing was not just cooperation, it was transformation into a new type of being. After long consideration, Daeho made his decision. I volunteer to be part of the Unity Ship project. Mira looked shocked. Commander, you are talking about giving up your individual Kepler identity. No, Daeho replied. I am talking about expanding it into something greater. One by one, his team members volunteered as well. Mira's navigation expertise, Jinwoo's tactical knowledge, and So Young's cultural understanding would all contribute to the merged consciousness that would operate the ship. Dr. Hyunsu, Captain Namgi, and Professor Yoonji also volunteered, bringing human scientific innovation, strategic thinking, and philosophical wisdom to the merger. Over the following months, the Unity ship took shape. It was beautiful in ways that conventional spacecraft could not be, its design flowing like living art while incorporating the most advanced principles of both human and Kepler science. The consciousness merger process was complex and gradual. Each volunteer underwent careful preparation to ensure that their individual personalities would contribute to rather than be lost in the merged awareness. When the ship was finally completed, 6 individual beings entered it and emerged.